Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. It's weird. I have a partner in crime. Wait, which way does it go? Wait, you're over there. There you are. Y'all, this is Courtney Boudet. Do I say your name right, Court?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
Good. So she is a QuickBooks guru. She has done bookkeeping, done all these fun things, but she has this amazing community where I want to call it right. It's called Quickbooks Online Reboot Bootcamp. And we'll talk about it a little bit at the end. But you guys, this is the girl who, when you are ready to transition, so first of all, oh my gosh, she does so many things. Let me slow down. I guess I should. Usually I give people like time to get on and I'm just like, we have too much to cover today. So anyways, you guys are joining in. Say hey to Courtney. Go ahead and let us know in the comments that you're here. I'll finish Courtney's introduction that I just jumped right into. But so Courtney helps you guys as business owners set up your books, right? So that they work, right? Because so many of us as business owners stop using our systems because they don't work right. So Courtney helps you get them set up, make sure they work right, teaches you the processes to do your own bookkeeping, and then when it's time, she helps you transition away from doing your own books to helping onboard a bookkeeper to take over. So I figured she was the perfect person to come in here and talk to you guys about when to hire a bookkeeper, when to stop doing it as an owner and start having someone else do it. Because I can sit here and talk to y'all, but figured I'd let the expert talk about it. So welcome, Courtney. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And I know a lot of you guys, as we're chatting, you guys feel free to, ask questions in the comments. I know you guys love to ask your questions. And if you're watching it on replay, which is how most of you guys watch this, just hashtag replay, let us know. But if you have questions, the best thing to do is go to our Money, Tax, and Finance Facebook group and post a separate question there. Courtney's in that group. You can tag her if you have questions. But if you just comment on the video, sometimes it gets lost. So just go start a new discussion over in our group. So Courtney, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So glad you guys, Courtney last minute was like, I was like, come on my show. And she's like, sure. So big thanks to Courtney. So Courtney, I'm going to let you just dive right in because like I said, you're the expert. And I'll just chime in when I feel necessary.
Okay. Sounds good. So I think the really important thing to mention is, like you said, a lot of people hate QuickBooks Online. And it's really because they kind of they hit the ground running. They started using it, used the little tiny tutorials with QuickBooks Online, which are great. They're awesome. But then they assume that because, it's kind of easy, it's supposed to be easy, that they've set it up properly. And that's not the case for every single person. Now, if you have an accounting background, it may be a little bit easier. But it really is important, especially if you're transitioning from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online, that you have somebody help you because they're different platforms. They have different things, especially like I know that a lot of people really get frustrated with the export of the full file into the new file. And so there's a couple of different ways that you can go about that. You don't have to bring all of your old historical data in if you don't want to. There's certain ways that you can, kind of start fresh and have your historical data in your old QuickBooks file while still bringing over your vendor list, your customer list, and your chart of accounts so that it's not like such a project. Because that's the thing that really does frustrate me about the QuickBooks Online like tutorial stuff. They're like, oh yeah, it'll take like less than an hour. And I don't know about you, Bri, but I've seen books that have been transitioned over. I've done a couple and I'm like, this is not easy. Like, I don't know.
I don't do my own either. Like I would and if clients need it, we outsource it because it's not easy.
Exactly.
It's important for you guys to recognize that QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online, even though they're both QuickBooks, think of them as two completely different products because they really are that different.
And I think if you really, really, really want your historical data, in the QuickBooks file, like if that's like a non-negotiable for you and you're like, no, I don't want to go back to my old file to look at it. I'd say like at least get the opinion of an outsourced bookkeeper or have them do it for you. Because we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but there are certain things that you shouldn't be doing as the CEO of your business, as the owner of your business. And transitioning your desktop file to your QuickBooks file, online file, isn't one of them unless you're doing the, completely fresh method, because that's easy enough to where it doesn't take like your whole time. But because it's like kind of in the press, I don't know how to say this, because QuickBooks says, oh, it's not that hard. People think, oh, I'm going to do this. Well, I mean, especially if you're coming from Mac, like the desktop Mac, there's like multiple different steps that you have to do. So I just understand that it's okay to be frustrated in that process and that it's not as easy as it's said to be. So just don't get frustrated with yourself if you're currently in that situation. The other thing is, don't take that experience and say QuickBooks Online sucks. Like that's the other thing, is that that transition is different, right? So everyone has to start fresh or transition over. They have to start using QuickBooks Online, and it's just different, right? And so I know that there's a lot of debate, like, and people are really passionate about that, like the difference between QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. And for me, I'm like, hey, whatever works best for your business is the best thing. And so for me, most small business owners who are doing their own bookkeeping, QuickBooks Online is the best solution, as long as you're not doing like inventory and manufacturing and all of like, and you have like a really high level company, like the, Simple Start or Essentials is pretty well enough for you. And that you should be on the online version, to where it's like you're doing minimal invoicing, you're paying bills yourself, you're doing all of the things. Using the receipt reader is freaking huge. Like that's one of the things where it's like the one file that I still have on QuickBooks Desktop for a client, I have an admin assistant. I have to, because they do all the data entry of the bills and all those kind of things. So when you're seeing people like, oh yeah, desktop is awesome, understand that they're spending time in manual data entry that a lot of bookkeepers used to have to do. And QuickBooks Online is taking that piece out of the equation, which is awesome for the outsourced bookkeepers, because we're now in the situation where, we are being able to really help like do more in your business from like a cash forecasting and budgeting, because it's not all that data entry. So we're not wasting time doing that. We're like actually there to be like your teammate and your advocate for your numbers and helping you know them. And so that's what a really good outsourced bookkeeper will do. They will be your outsourced like teammate to help you understand and to give you those financials on a timely and regular basis, and make sure that they're correct, and kind of keep you in check to make sure you're getting your receipts in and all those kind of things.
Perfect. And so you guys, so what Courtney is saying here is, so before we even jump, like we're kind of, she got your toes wet, but we're talking, as to doing your own books and then hiring your bookkeeper. But before that, even if you're doing your own books, you guys, you have to. You don't have to, but we tell you, you have to hire somebody to set up your QuickBooks Online.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay? Because your frustration as doing your own books, so much of it will be alleviated if it's set up correctly with all the automations and the memorization. Like it has so many tools, but you have to know how to set it up. And it's one-time thing. You set it up, it's good to go, and then you just need to know how to use it. It's a lot easier as a business owner to learn how to use QuickBooks than to learn how to set it up. And why learn to do something that you're never going to have to do again?
Right.
What a waste of your valuable time.
Yeah.
Okay? So yes, it's going to cost you money, but it is going to be worth every penny you pay to hire a professional to set up your QuickBooks. Right, Court?
Exactly. And the other thing too is like, even if you're not going to hire them for the full setup, you can hire them to walk you through the process. That is really important, is to understand that your chart of accounts flow to your profit and loss and your balance sheet. And it's really important that you know your chart of accounts. And so I remember when I first started my business with my husband, I was really confused about them. They scared me. I didn't want to touch them. I felt like I was going to mess something up. And so if you're in that mindset and you're scared of your chart of accounts, you shouldn't be touching your bookkeeping. I'm just telling you straight out, because there's a lot of automations and stuff that you can set up wrong. So you need to make sure like the in the receipt or the bank feed section, that's one big area I'm going to tell you that you can get a lot of duplications. You can get a lot of errors. So do not start at your bank feed, please. You need to follow a really good system. And so I think I got sidetracked, but what
we're good. Like professional to set it up, and then to give you some training on how to use it, so you're utilizing it to to its capacity. Because guys,
perfect.
Hiring someone to do that is way cheaper than your accountant getting it at the end of the year to do your tax return, finding a mess of things, and then paying them $250 an hour to start going through that stuff and fixing it.
Yes.
Okay? Don't go back and fix it.
Well, it's even cheaper to do it yourself in the setup process with a bookkeeper than to pay that bookkeeper 12 months later to clean it up because you set it up improperly. Because cleanup can be an issue. And if you ask somebody, what is your standard cleanup process? It changes. It's different because every business is different. If you have like 5 checking accounts, it's going to be more cleanup, and you have 12 months to clean up. Like it's a lot. So you just have to understand that it really kind of sometimes feels hard to pay that money up front. When QuickBooks is an inexpensive solution, but it's so worth it. So either hire somebody to do it or hire somebody to show you the methodology to do it yourself if you really want to. But yeah, so that's my tips on that.
Perfect. So you guys, you get on your QuickBooks Online and you have someone help you walk through it, or they do it for you.
Right.
You spend time. So I like the idea of business owners handling their finances and their booking for at least a little bit of time. And I think, Courtney, you're on the same page as me. Because in order to understand the end result, you kind of need to understand the ins and outs. And this is how I feel about anything in your business. I believe as a business owner, you should know how to do anything that anyone else prior to do. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying you have to do it more than a couple months, okay? Right. But you have to know how it works. And then as soon as you're ready, you're like, I'm done. Like, this bookkeeping thing sucks and I don't want to do it anymore. Getting to that bookkeeper. So that's what we're going to jump into now is when do I know that it's time? Sure, I'm done doing it. I'm sick of doing it, but when can I afford it? When is it time to make that transition from doing it myself to hiring someone?
Yeah, so there's a couple of different metrics that I use. And one of them is that if you're spending more than an hour a week doing your own bookkeeping, you shouldn't be doing your own bookkeeping. And that goes back to the automations that I talk about with QuickBooks Online. You shouldn't have, like, if you have manufacturing or inventory or something crazy hard, I'm going to say straight out of the gate, you should probably hire a bookkeeper. Agreed. That's just my personal opinion. It's a lot. I don't know that it's really the return on investment of you doing it, and the amount of mistakes and errors and, calculations that you could miss by just not knowing what you don't know.
Yeah. So it's not only time consuming, there is just so much room for error if you don't know what you're looking at.
Right. So if your business is at a high level of complexity or regulation or something like that, like straight out of the gate, I'm going to say hire a bookkeeper. And generally in those types of fields, you already have like a higher level of capital like coming into your business anyway. So, adding a bookkeeper isn't going to be hard for you. A lot of times it's, smaller service-based businesses where, you still have time. Your schedule isn't 100% booked out. So you have more time than money to invest into bookkeeping. Mm-hmm. So that's where, it makes sense for you. And like Bree, I 100% believe that you should at least do it a little bit of time, except for those complicated ones, because you can get yourself in a really big pickle and we don't want to do that. But what you can do in that situation, a complicated situation, is you can sit down with your bookkeeper and say, hey, I want to understand at least how you're getting these numbers. And you can do that on the profit and loss even. And so you can have them sit down with you on a monthly basis. That's what I do is we have like a monthly finance meeting. And so we go over the numbers with the leadership teams or the CEOs and that kind of thing, because there's certain things that I understand the numbers of how they transition. And just by me saying it out loud, they're like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. So like literally reading the financials to people is really helpful. So, I mean, if you're at a place where you don't even understand your profit and loss, have your bookkeeper, your outsourced bookkeeper read it to you. Like, have them help you understand the different things. So, so the higher complicated things, outsource right away. But if for the smaller service-based business, the more time that you have, so like I said, my goal is really like an hour or less. Now, if you're in cleanup mode and you're doing your own cleanup or that kind of thing, an hour is not going to be enough. Like setup cleanup, you have research to do. There's all sorts of things. But once you get past the cleanup and setup mode and you're in a really good accounting rhythm, you should be able to do it within at least an hour a week or less. And then from that point, if you're doing any more, it's really time to start looking at like, hey, is this worth my time to be doing to be doing this? You know, so that's the other thing. And then also like if you are just at the cusp of like, you know, you're making money and your schedule is completely booked. You can't, like, you're doing your bookkeeping like in after hours because you're just slammed and your money is coming in the door. It's not necessarily an issue, but you're scared. Like maybe you're scared to outsource because you're scared. Like you're like, oh, I don't know. Like I want to clean them up before I have a bookkeeper in there. Yes. I would say, hey, like, first of all, very few of us bookkeepers are judgmental when we get in your books. It's like kind of like when you're scared to go to a doctor because you don't want them to see you, like, and all that kind of stuff, and you're scared. It's just everyday business for us. You know, it's not like anything crazy. So if I get into a set of books that are, you know, quote unquote messy, I just have questions. I'm like, hey, where do you want to go? Like, how can I help you? Like, it comes more from a compassion standpoint than it does like, oh my gosh, why are these books so messy? So I think that's what, but people are scared of that, right? They're really, really embarrassed about it. And the other thing too is I think that small business owners think, oh, everybody else has their stuff together, right? Everybody else's books are like super clean and that kind of thing. No, I'm going to tell you, no. There have been people, like, full transparency, I have had people come to me. I was like, oh, for sure their books are going to be clean. And they have little issues. So I'm just saying, like, even me, I am like, oh my gosh, that person has it all together. So you cannot judge anybody by like that. What was it? You can't judge everybody's front end by the back end, or there's like a thing about that. You know, so don't be embarrassed. Like, that is like, I'm just telling you, like, most bookkeepers, it's just very clinical is what I was trying to say. Like, it's just, we assess, we tell you what we can do, and we tell you what we can't do, kind of thing. And so the other thing is you can put proper controls, and you should put proper controls into your bookkeeping so that, you know, they can't wire transfer on your behalf. You know, all bookkeepers should have access to your bank account in a way that they can see your statements.
Yes.
So it's called a bookkeeper's access. Like, most banks understand what that is, but they should not, like I said, they shouldn't have access to actually touch your money and be able to move it. Those kind of things should still be the CEO. And I'm really curious on your stance on that as well. Like, is that something that you advise as well?
100% agreed. We actually had a client earlier this year whose bookkeeper had full access of things, and she was embezzling. Yes. Because she was doing everything and had access to all that.
That's so scary.
Yes. And this is like, so it's very important, you guys. And it doesn't always have to be you, but that there are those, we call them checks and balances, right? Like, and separation of duties. That's what it is.
Yes, separation of duties. Yeah.
That the person who, you know, does the reconciliation is not the same person who approves your checks. Okay?
Exactly.
So eventually, hopefully you get big enough to where you're not approving everything, but somebody other than the person reconciling and writing the checks is. So you see that two people always have access to all of the payments going out of your business, so that there's a second set of eyes, so that can see if there's something fishy going, because it might not always be malicious, you guys.
No. Yeah.
Humans make errors. And that's the same thing. We've had clients whose bookkeeper just continued to make the same error, you know, and just never got caught. And it was hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's just like having those two sets of eyes is really, really important.
The other thing too that just kind of made me think of something is that I know a lot of people are like, when you outsource to a bookkeeper, they want to go cheap and or like, hey, my aunt kind of knows bookkeeping, or like my sister knows bookkeeping or something like that. And unless your sister or aunt is like an actual bookkeeper, I say steer away from that and hire somebody that you can, you know, talk to 3 of their references, or you ask people in your community, small business owners that you know and trust, say, hey, who's your bookkeeper? And then interview 3 bookkeepers. Because I've seen some really messed up books from people like just having like a family member or, you know, somebody down the street who's like, oh, I kind of know how to do books, and they don't.
Yeah.
It's really, really important that you vet your bookkeeper and make sure that they're going to do a good job, because like Bree said, the consequences are very, very high. So it's not even a safety standpoint of like making sure they are not embezzling from you. And that is really important. But it's making sure that they can actually do what they're supposed to do and they know what they're doing.
Yes. And this is, you guys, and because you've heard me say the same things to you guys as accountants, you know, as tax preparers, and bookkeeping is the same, and just because they're a QuickBooks advisor or a CPA, or doesn't mean they're good at what they do. And it doesn't mean they're going to be good at what your industry or your business is.
Right.
So vetting these people, asking specific questions, you know, hey, this is my industry. And it goes back to knowing at least the basics of your financials, knowing, do you have inventory? Do you run payroll? Do you have sales tax to pay? All these little things that you should know as a business owner, so that you can make sure that the bookkeeper, because the bookkeeper can be one of the best in, you know, the country, but they have to know your industry and your business.
Yeah.
Okay. And that brings me back. There is one, it says accountant, but same with bookkeeper. If you think a good let's say bookkeeper, if you think a good bookkeeper is expensive, try hiring a bad one. And I can't tell you how much people have spent on, I mean, because guys, it takes, Courtney, I don't know if but it takes us about 3 times as long to do cleanup work.
Oh yeah.
When it's done wrong, not when it's not done, but when it's done wrong.
For sure.
Because when it's not done, at least we can just do it our way, right? It's like, so you're like, oh, I'm behind a year. Fine, give me your stuff. We're good.
Exactly.
When you have a bookkeeper who didn't know what they were doing, you have no idea what they could have messed up. You just you happen to find a number. You're like, not sure that's, you know, where that's coming from, and you just have to go down a rabbit hole to figure out what's wrong and try to fix it. It costs so much money. So do not go cheap on your bookkeepers. Okay.
No,
it's going to cost you in the end.
It really will. It really will. And just make sure that you vet them from people that you trust, you yourself trust, you know, like it's really important that you know that you can, you know, count on them. And the one thing I wanted to mention too is that because in the past year, I've seen a couple of different instances is whenever you get a QuickBooks Online file, it is imperative that you as the business owner, or if you have a COO or something, whoever is the person in your company that is, you know, designated in the finance has the master administrator. So your bookkeeper won't have your master administrator. It will be you or the vice president or whoever it is in your company who is designated in that position. But your accountant, CPA, bookkeeper should not have that, because if anything goes sour, you need to be able to boot people out of your QuickBooks file as soon as possible. And I've seen that time and time and time again, where they move services, and actually the one was a bookkeeper, one was a CPA, and they just got pissed and they didn't give their QuickBooks file. So I had to call my representative and be like, hey, what is this? What happens? And he's like, well, I know that the QuickBooks file is their personal property because their business property, because it's their business. And sometimes it does have to go through a legal route to do it, but it always sides on the business owner. But you don't want to have to go through that. You don't want to have to go through that.
And this is a really easy fix, you guys. If you're not setting up your own QuickBooks, if you're going through a pro advisor or Jamie's here, hey, Jamie or Courtney, just ask, be like, just tell them I am going to be the master admin, correct?
Right.
I will have master admin control. Just you as the business owner has the master admin. That's it. You don't actually you never have to log into your master admin account, but you need to have access, because for all the reasons Courtney said, okay? Yeah, you have to have access.
Yeah, it's really important. And it's something that most people don't really know, especially if you started getting, you know, outsourcing from day one, you know, or you got your file from a pro advisor, CPA, or, you know, bookkeeper or whatever. It's just something that I've noticed has been an issue for a couple of my clients. So I just want to make sure that everybody knows that from the get-go.
Yeah. So, all right. So you got anything else, Court, or can we summarize?
We can summarize now.
Okay, cool. So you guys, when do you hire a bookkeeper? Okay. At the beginning, you hire a bookkeeper on a project basis to either set up your QuickBooks or to help you set up your QuickBooks, right? Then you do it yourself for a while. And then when you're ready to outsource is when, and Courtney touched on this, is when your time in your bookkeeping is more than about an hour a week. All right. When you're regularly doing it and it's more than an hour, you should be outsourcing, because that means if it's taking you longer than an hour, you're not, things aren't, automated, right? Things aren't as smooth as they could.
You just have so many transactions that even the automations aren't helping you anymore. Yes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then the second part of that, you guys, is Courtney touched on it, is when you're doing your bookkeeping after hours. Because it's one thing when you're not working a full week, right? And you're just like, well, I have time to do it, so I'm going to do it, right? But once you're to the point where you're now taking away from your revenue generating activities to do your bookkeeping, it's time. Even if it's taking you an hour or less a day, it's time. Because think about it. Let's say your hourly rate is $50 an hour, okay? And it's taking you 2 hours a week to do your bookkeeping. Okay. So it's $100 a week that you are not making because you're doing your bookkeeping. Okay. $100 a week times 4 weeks. Am I right? That's $400 a month. Mm-hmm. You have $400 a month that you could be hiring a bookkeeper for. And for $400 a month, you can probably get what you need. Okay. So think of it in that way. What money are you leaving on the table by continuing to do your own bookkeeping? Okay. And that's your budget. Okay. That's your budget for a bookkeeper. So it's kind of our way of tough love. Don't tell us you don't have the money for a bookkeeper. If you're at capacity with your hours and your work hours, you have time, because all you got to do is spend that bookkeeping time on revenue generating activities instead of your bookkeeping. Boom.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's all about your billable hours. The one thing I do want to mention, though, is that there are some people who their brain works best at night. So it's like, if your normal billable hours are at night, you know what I mean? And your brain works best. Okay, do your bookkeeping then. What we're talking about is if you work like 8 to 5 and you're like packed and you're still trying to like do your bookkeeping at night, you know what I mean? Like that's where it's really important, like Bree said, to take the return on investment of all of the things, all of your time that you're putting into your business.
Yes. I'm just showing off. Jamie's here. Jamie's supposed to be working. She's supposed to be course creating. I know. Oh, thanks.
But it's true. Most people do wait too long. That is one of the things of, it's one of those things where it's either fear or it's just, you know what? One of the things too that people do is they're like, I have this. This is like, I'm in a good rhythm. Like I know how to do it. And sometimes I'm going to kind of go against like what we just said, but sometimes even if you're doing it and it takes less than an hour, but you have other things that you could be doing, like, and you're making money. It's not even about the money anymore. It's just about the fact that you just, it's something that you just have always done. It's a process that you've always done. You know what? Let's start something new. Let's get to the outsource phase. Like it's really important that you don't get stuck in a rut as a business owner either.
Yes. So if you guys are if you're hesitant to hire a bookkeeper, you got to figure out why. Yes. Is it because you don't think you have the cash flow? If that's the case, do what we just said, figure out what your budget is based on the hours that you're leaving on the table of generating revenue. Is it because you're scared or embarrassed of your books? That's an easy one. Okay? No matter how messy your books are, we've seen worse. I promise you. Okay. So that and a good bookkeeper, a good understanding bookkeeper is not gonna shame you. They're not gonna do that to you. If your bookkeeper does, you got the wrong bookkeeper.
Find someone else.
All right. And the third one is that you don't want to let go of that control. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's like, but you guys, as a business owner, okay, if you are doing everything in your business, you're not running a business. Okay. Right. A business can run on its own. Mm-hmm. Okay. A company can run on its own. And so you got to start letting those responsibilities go, including your bookkeeping. Right. All right. So that, and since Jamie's here, I'm going to remind you guys that letting go of your bookkeeping does not mean ignoring your financial.
Yes.
Okay. Sure. And I do want to touch on that. That means the day-to-day, the monotonous stuff, someone else is doing. Okay. But once a month, once a quarter, you're still looking at your financials with your bookkeeper, with your accountant. So you know where you are financially.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, even implement like a monthly financial meeting if you want to, if you really want to make sure. I'm sure that your bookkeeper would be totally fine with that. Some already include that. I just don't want to speak for everyone, right. Because that's what I personally do. So I don't want to do that. So yeah, it's really important that I personally say once a month. And then I also like quarterly reviews. So like kind of like a QBR. So it's really important to make sure that you actually get it done.
Perfect. And then Wendy says, can Courtney help me or trade me so I can help my clients with QuickBooks? So Wendy's an accountant as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yes.
Oh,
so
I had never been thinking about that. But yeah.
So I put the link for Courtney's QuickBooks Online Reboot Bootcamp in the comments. And then she also can do a consultation with you guys for one-on-one services, right, Court?
For sure. Yeah. So I help people in a couple of different ways. So the QuickBooks Reboot Bootcamp is for Bree's community. I have it open until December 31st. So that really is for somebody who has been just, doing their own bookkeeping, but there's a nagging feeling that it's wrong and that just things aren't lining up and things aren't reconciling. Or you're like, hey, I'm ready to transition from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online with that kind of fresh new file, maybe not going through the whole, transitioning the whole file account. So for those people, those small business owners, that is what the bootcamp is for. But I also do one-on-one sessions where it's like a bookkeeping check-in. If you're just like, hey, I just want to kind of assess where I'm at, totally there. And then for the small business owners who really need month-by-month support, I have a membership where you can, pop into office hours once a week. And then we also have bookkeeping co-working sessions where we hop on the line for an hour. We all do our bookkeeping, and then you can ask questions, raise your hand and ask questions as you're doing your bookkeeping. So that's what's really, really important because a lot of people need help while they're doing their bookkeeping.
Perfect. So good, Court. Do you have anything to kind of end us with? I think we covered everything I was going to cover, but
yeah, I just want to end with, going back to really not being shameful about where you're at. There are certain things all of us small business owners struggle with. And so it's really important to understand that if you're struggling with your bookkeeping, that's okay. I struggle with Facebook ads. I struggle with copywriting. You know what I mean? Like we all struggle with certain things in our business that others don't struggle with. So just don't be afraid to ask for help and don't be ashamed because you're not alone in having books that need help.
Yes. So good, you guys. So we're good. I think we covered, there wasn't really a lot of questions, just Wendy. So awesome. Y'all that are here, remember that our Q&A session is right here. So we're going to log off here off training. We're going to thank Courtney for being here. And then if you want to join us for updates and Q&A, jump right back on into that event. Otherwise, we will see you guys next week when we talk about when it's time to hire an accountant. No special guest because I'm going to handle it. So we will see you guys next week. One more big thank you to Courtney. Please, you guys, if you're interested, check out her services. She is awesome. All right. Thanks again, Courtney.